Hey guys, welcome back to the Football Diary podcast. And the Euros are upon us. Excitement is here. International football is back. It's been a great opening few games so far, actually. So we'll be discussing that, our highlights and what we've noticed from the tournament so far. But I think it's first probably worth mentioning the Christian Eriksen situation for the Denmark national team. So really sad to see him collapse on the pitch during his game against Finland. And from what we hear, he's making a good recovery so far. But I think we can all say that it was a horrific thing to witness on a football pitch. I think the fact that it was played out on telly in front of millions as well kind of made the situation a lot more distressing for people to watch. But I think it goes without saying that everybody here at the Football Diary extends our sort of best wishes to Chris and his family, really, because it was a horrible thing to witness, I think, for all football fans, for anyone, really, football related or not. So I think that's first order of the day is just to sort of say that. And hats off to the Denmark team as well for the way they handled it. And the players, the senior players, I think protected the situation really, really well. So, yeah, a horrible way to sort of start talking about it. But we had to acknowledge that, really. Other than that, the football has been decent, I think it's fair to say. I'm joined by Myles and Dave today to go through that. So welcome to both of you. We'll start off with the England game, first of all. England beating Croatia 1-0. Fair to say when Gareth Southgate announced his starting 11, a few eyebrows were raised. Certainly on the Discord, we were scratching our heads, really, weren't we, about what the hell he was doing. A few questionable decisions there. But I think it's fair to say that a few of them paid off pretty well. So, Dave, I'll start with you. What was your take on it? You're normally really positive in these situations, so we'll get your take on it. Did Southgate repay his faith in his players that he put out there? Do you think his squad selection was justified in the end? Is a 1-0 win just rewards, really, for the way England played?
I think going off of what obviously we've spoken about on it previously, is kind of what we anticipated, that he will go for a quicker player on one side and then obviously Foden on the opposite. And we were talking about whether it would be Grealish or Foden because we didn't anticipate they play both of them. We were right on that one. So I wasn't surprised to see Sterling in the team, to be honest. And to be honest, a lot of our good play kind of came from that left-hand side at the beginning of the game when we did look dangerous. So. And that's probably one of Sterling's better games of late. I wouldn't say. I think they're overstating it in saying how well he's played. Honestly, that goal just before, he was just lacking that final pass in the final third, and it's kind of been how it's gone for him, to be honest, this season for Man City as well. He's kind of been almost nearly a nearly player. I know that's been quite the theme it has been for him in the past for England. That's his first goal at a major tournament, which is ridiculous. But bringing in Trippier, obviously, he talks about experience and being good in 1v1 situations. I don't think he's a better 1v1 defender than Luke Shaw, probably Chilwell. But to be honest, it's looking like he'll potentially switch to a left back. Another left back, a proper left back, the next game against Scotland. It's probably going to be Luke Shaw by the looks of it, because Chilwell wasn't even on the bench, was he?
True. I think some of the selection question marks that we had were, first of all, the fact that, Sancho and Chilwell weren't on the bench. Whether that's a fitness thing, we don't know. We can only assume it is. But, that was a surprise. I think also to see two right-backs starting felt like a bit of a slight on Shaw and Chilwell to see Trippier start at left back rather. But I can see the logic now. I think he was worried about Tyrone Mings and potentially his lack of confidence going into his first major tournament game. So it was kind of some defensive cover for him, I think, was the reasoning behind it. Kind of worked, to be fair. So fair play for that. Sterling, I don't think was as controversial because nobody in that front line is nailed on, are they, to play? But I think for me, it was Calvin Phillips, really, was the standout selection decision from him. Because to be fair to him, I slated the decision to potentially play Rice and Phillips together. But Phillips wasn't really a holding player, was he? He kind of had free role. So I think a lot of the decisions he made were justified. Myles, I'll go to you next. What was your take on the England setup? How did you think he played it?
I think, well, to be honest, just to touch on what you said at the start, I found it really hard to care about this game as much as I thought I was going to, which is really sad. I watched the Denmark-Finland game live and seeing it was horrible, man.
Yeah.
And it put a lot into perspective and kind of killed my excitement for the tournament, kind of rightfully so in many ways. So it was nice to kind of try and get invested in the game once it started playing. I'm glad that England got the win. But it did make me think a lot about just football, really. Like, don't know, it's a weird one. But I think putting my England hat on and looking at it from how I felt about the game, when the lineup came out, the first thing I said was, I can't believe how conservative he's gone and how safe this pick has been.
Yeah.
He picked the obvious name in Sterling when I really don't think he should have. And yes, he got his goal, but I think Dave's right. I think that's clouded a lot of people's judgment on how good he was in that game. I don't think he was particularly effective. I feel like we had a lot of opportunity for him to be effective, and his movement kind of, we saw it for City. We saw it in the Champions League final. His movement is still there. His pace is still there, but he's not really doing anything at the end of it. He's making runs and kind of miscontrolling the ball or picking the wrong pass or not getting his shot off. And I think he even got quite fortunate in his finish for the goal. And I think it's very easy to look at a headline and go, 1-0, Sterling scored, Sterling was a good pick. I don't think it was, personally. But we'll see what happens in the Scotland game. I'm hearing this talk that Jack will come in for the Scotland game, which I would love to see, obviously. And the other thing that I was really critical of was why we needed Phillips and Rice. I thought he bottled it, to be honest with that. And it was the best I've ever seen Calvin Phillips play football.
Yeah.
Through his time in the Championship with Leeds, the Premier League, and in an England shirt, he was fantastic. I've never seen him play that kind of role before. He's always been a holding midfielder, but he had so much license to get forward that at times it was like he was playing as a number 10. I mean, the run that he makes and the little through ball for Sterling's goal is fantastic. And that's what you want to see from a midfielder. It was very dynamic. He had his own effort at goal at one point as well, just outside the box. And you thought he was getting himself about. He was breaking things up. His good little clever tactical fouls, stopping play for Croatia, but then bringing the ball forward for England. He wasn't just there to disrupt, he was also there to influence. And I thought that was really impressive. I thought he had a really, really good game. As far as Trippier goes, obviously the first sight of it is, what's he thinking? I started to wonder about the system and how he was going to line up. So playing Trippier at that left back, I think is still an odd decision personally. Playing a right-footed left back when you've got two very, very good left backs who have just been in European finals as well. Let's remember, you're not talking like we were at the bare bones of a squad. It's one of the stronger positions we've got. So it was an odd selection, but he didn't have too bad a game. I don't think he had much to do. Croatia were really disappointing, I thought. Obviously not disappointing from being an England fan, but they offered nothing, really. I don't think England had too much to worry about. I will say it was the best games Mings has had in an England shirt. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he did everything he needed to do, covered himself very, very well. Foden got himself about a little bit, but again, was, I think, mildly underwhelming. When he had that chance quite early on and he hit the post, he thought, hello, he is here, he's going to turn up. And I don't really think we saw that much of him afterwards. I think England were just a bit flat, really. Let's be honest. It's probably been the worst game of the tournament so far. It wasn't very exciting. There wasn't too much to cheer on. But England got a win, and that's what Southgate will want from his first game. England have never won their first game at a European Championship until this one. That's a mad thing.
Yeah, it's a bit of a monkey off the back, really, isn't it, of England? So I think that, to Southgate's credit, was important to start in that way. You're right. Mings, was faultless, I think. He definitely discovered his confidence again. And I think it was literally just a confidence thing from those international friendlies before the tournament that was affecting him. He really stood out, I think. You're right. I've never seen Calvin Phillips play like that before. And I've seen Leeds fans popping up all over the place saying, told you so, we knew this all along. But I've never seen him play this effectively. But again, it's a different kind of role for him, isn't it? So, interesting one. Dave, would you say that Southgate got it right then? I mean, with Sterling, I think he was readying a substitution to take him off, wasn't he? I could see Jack Grealish warming up just before that goal. I'm thinking maybe it's time to hook Sterling here. Do you think that was about to happen? And do you think the goal maybe saved Sterling a little bit? And do you reckon he'll start Sterling the next game if that's the case?
I think if you look on the basis of the play over the course of the game, I think almost his selection was very safe in terms of the fullbacks. The choice of the fullbacks almost hampered us going forward, and I think that's why we didn't get to see a lot of the likes of Foden. We just weren't getting up the pitch. Kyle Walker had a bit of a nightmare going forward. He just not often getting support to Foden. And there wasn't any overlaps, and it was just all a bit disjointed going forward. I think that's why there was very few chances for us. So I think he was playing it safe in a way that he wanted to be sure at the back. He's probably still not 100% certain on his defence. Probably feel reassured by it. But I think the defenders didn't really have a lot to deal with. Like Myles was saying, that Croatia team is not the same Croatia team we saw 3 years ago.
No, definitely not.
Oh, the problem is it is. I think the problem is it is the same, literally the same team.
Personnel. Yeah.
So they've just aged and they've not kept up the kind of intensity, and they've lost their focal point.
What you say, Dave? Didn't hear you then.
There's no Rakitic anymore, is there?
True. But no, I think you're right about the wing backs. I think it was a conservative first game. Maybe the second game he'll change his approach, but I think he trusts Trippier and he trusts Walker, doesn't he? At the end of the day,
I think if he put Luke Shaw in there instead of Kieran Trippier, the result would have been any different. Probably not.
Maybe it was a case of giving Mings the confidence to know that he had quite a good tackling left back behind him. Having said that, Luke Shaw's defensively very good as well. So
I think Luke Shaw's completely, he's the PFA Team of the Year in that left back slot. I think he's probably our best defensive fullback, and the fact that Trippier kept having to pull back onto his right foot, it kind of halted any sort of momentum gathering. It was kind of turning back, and then it was often going kind of square or behind him again. So we weren't really getting many crosses in, and to be honest, you did see Harry Kane come in really deep because he was just coming in to get the ball because he didn't have much coming from those flanks really. Whenever Sterling was on the ball, he was kind of looking to run in field because there wasn't any overlaps. So it was all a bit congested. I think the one thing that we did have from midfield was Calvin Phillips offered an outlet running forward. He kind of what we struggled, I think, in our last World Cup. We just didn't have the midfielder that could kind of carry the ball forward and operate in those spaces. So it was good to see that. It's just now, when we come to face a better opponent, is this as good as the performance is going to get? Is it going to be solid and we might have 3 or 4 chances and maybe score one of them? Because that's not going to be good enough to beat some of the best teams in the world.
Yeah, true. I think with the approach, I do think it was just a first game thing, get through it. Croatia are still potentially a dangerous team. And on the face of it, the statistics were very even. I think it was like 50-50 possession. Shot count was the same. The only thing that was different was, I think, expected goals. England had like 1.5 to Croatia's 0.5. So they created by far the better chances and took one of them. That's all it took in the end. So I think fair play to Southgate for balancing the experience with the youth. I think he didn't want to put all the youth in one go in the first game of the Euros, and fair play. That's a sensible thing to do. I think Trippier was a right-sided player on the left-hand side to potentially recover from Mings if he made a mistake. It's easier for a right-footed player to come in to cover in the centre of defence if there's a mistake going on than it is for a naturally left-footed player. So I can see the logic. I just hope he doesn't continue this conservatively through the rest of the tournament. Is that going to be something that you think he might do, Myles, from what you've seen?
Croatia would have been the game that he'd earmarked as the worry. I think there's obviously a bit of personal intent there. He really wanted to get through the Croatia game and wants to prove a point. To win that first game is really important. And also, with the way that the format of this tournament is now, just not losing that game was really, really important. You start to build momentum from them. So I don't mind him being conservative against them. They're probably the biggest threat in the group, although Czech Republic looked decent today, didn't they? I hope it doesn't persist, I'll be honest. But I guarantee if we get to the last 16 and get a France or Portugal or Germany like we expect to, he's going to go conservative again, isn't he? We'll see Phillips and Rice in midfield again. We might see Trippier where he was again. We'll probably see Sterling to try and get some pace on the break. I don't necessarily agree that that's the right thing to do. I understand the logic behind some of it, particularly when Kane is looking to drop so deep, giving him some pace to overlap. That does make sense. But if Sterling's movement is good and his end product is poor, it's useless. I would rather see us try and create more for Kane rather than getting him to create for others.
I think we have to celebrate a 1-0 win for what it is. It's a great first result, isn't it, really? So that accepted, I'm happy as an England fan to see that on the board. I'm sure Southgate's as relieved as well. But I think everybody was screaming out for Jack, weren't they? Grealish was being cheered to come on by literally every England supporter. I'm sure he was. Yeah. I think we know what players like that can do. They can unlock so much, can't they? And we all want to be entertained. I don't want to grind my way to the last stages either. So there's a balance there for Southgate to kind of act on, really, isn't there?
I do think with him as well, he's not an impact sub.
No.
He often grows into games and he often dictates the pace of a game from the start. And I do think that if you want to utilise him properly, you've got to start him. Because think about how many players... I know it's such a silly thing to keep them back to, but how many players get early bookings for challenges they put in on Jack?
True.
And then that changes the way that a defence sets up because they think, I've got to be more cautious now. And he's not someone who's relying on tired defenders or breaking at pace. He's someone who is meticulous and he finds space. He brings players towards him, opens up space for others. You want to catch players like that early on. I don't think he should be this sub. I'd rather see Foden as a sub. Not because I don't think he's good enough to start, but I think he'd have a better impact at that point. Starting Jack, bring him off, bring Foden on, give him something different to think about. Foden's a bit more direct like that. I think he's getting it wrong so far in that sense. But we're moaning about a win, and that's nice for England because it's been a while since we could say that.
It is, yeah, you're right. I think Jack is a great plan A, isn't he? You've got to sort of build your approach around him to begin with. But in terms of plan Bs off the bench, Sancho would have been a perfect alternative, I think, in that situation. Yeah. I think Dave touched on it on the Discord group that he brought Rashford on, and that he's not really ever excelled on the right, has he? So that was a bit inexplicable. So it was kind of primed for a Sancho cameo, I think, in that situation. But yeah, a win is a win, Dave. Is there any sort of positives you take from that going forward? Phillips being probably the highlight, but is there anything else you think, yeah, do you know what, that's given me plenty of confidence?
I think defensively we looked comfortable. Mars mentioned about me. I think, he was probably the best defender back there. He looked really assured. As did I don't really want to give too much credit to the fullbacks because I just don't think really they had much to do. It was kind of all very disjointed from Croatia. They were just kind of like aimlessly crossing balls in, and the amount of times that they overhit crosses and just went after a throw-in or just went nowhere near a player, they didn't seem to have any sort of plan. So you obviously can't argue with a win at the end of the day, can you? But I think as fans are always wanting more from England, especially with the players that we have, that we've got in the squad. You're definitely right there about Rashford. That sub just didn't make any sense, right? Bringing him on to the right wing, but that was also a blunder that he's made. He's got two players on the bench who played, their best football off of the left in Grealish and Rashford, and then he's got no one to replace Foden, who obviously took off, who was on a yellow card. So
yeah,
he kind of.
Have we heard anything about that?
About what?
Is Sancho carrying a knock or an injury or anything like that? Why?
As far as we're aware, no.
Bizarre. That.
Yeah, it is.
I think he was ill. He was ill, wasn't he, just before the tournament started? But I thought he got over that because I think he played the friendly. He played the last friendly, didn't he? Yeah,
it's a weird one.
It's really weird not to put Sancho in there. I thought he might start.
They had two goalkeepers on, but I've heard that's UEFA regulation now, weirdly. So that's odd. But yeah, there's some selection headaches, nice ones for the next game. And we've seen Scotland and the Czech Republic in action today. So we know a bit about what he's facing or potentially facing in the next game. So in the next couple of games. And I'll be honest, I didn't think either Scotland or Czech Republic looked like a particularly dangerous threat. But with Scotland, it's a derby. So you just never know, do you? That's the thing.
I will say Patrick Schick looked like he turned up. Obviously, the second goal was insane. It's beautiful technique. You see those ones, and usually it's hit straight and up. And you just hope that it's going in the right direction. He managed to curl it round as well.
It was insane,
beautiful finish. And his header was good as well. And that's what Schick will do. He really frustrates me, Schick, because obviously he moved to Roma after a brilliant first season in Italy. And it looked fantastic. And he just never really shone there and moved on really quickly. But he is a good forward, and he's someone that England will have to watch out for. They've got a few players, Czech Republic, like that. Obviously, we know Souček and Soufal from their time at West Ham. Vidra as well. He come off the bench today, but he's someone who's capable of a goal. So I think that there are still things to consider about our opponents. But you're right, where Scotland pose the biggest danger, not because they're the best side, but just because you're scared of how up for it they're going to be.
Yeah, but they created a lot of chances today. They did. They could have. I think they had about 15 chances or something, and didn't come anywhere close to scoring a goal. And in situations where you'd expect a class player to sort of bury it, I think Andy Robertson had a shot tipped over the bar. Any other player in a forward position would just drill it low and test the goalkeeper low. So that's what should have happened. And their expected goals was, I think, 3. I'm sure they were meant to score 2 or 3 goals, but obviously they only got the 1. So, yeah.
They're
Difficult one,
on Robertson, though, aren't they? They're just over-reliant on Robertson and Tierney wasn't there.
Yeah.
McGinn does a great job for him, and he's scored a lot of goals for Scotland recently.
I think he's in there now, isn't he?
It's going to probably bite me saying this. They're probably going to score 3 against England, but their forwards are poor, aren't they? Really, they're not good enough.
Depends on the occasion.
Is in there now, and I think that says everything. He couldn't get anywhere near an international call up for England. He'd probably be. Would Che Adams be in the top 20 if you were looking for strikers to take for England?
No. Not when Watkins and others and Ings aren't getting in the squad. Definitely not.
No. He's not a finisher, is he, Che Adams?
No. So a few interesting sort of questions for the upcoming games, and how Southgate tackles those will be an interesting test of his agility as a manager, I think.
The other positive, just quickly, was when Bellingham came on, he looked great, I thought.
Right at home.
Calm, assured, broke things up really well, and that's what you want to see from a 17-year-old start in the Euros. The youngest ever player at the Euros. Incredible.
Very impressive. He was. I think he's an impressive guy. Like, physically, he looks well beyond 17, doesn't he? But the way he holds his composure in those situations, that's why he went to the Bundesliga, to sort of gain that big game experience. And you can tell it's paid off massively.
He's great.
But that's why I don't understand why he's not taking a chance on the likes of Reece James and Ben Chilwell, because it's not like they're novices at this level. They've played in Champions League finals and won. So it's not a gamble for me. And I think he needs to be braver than he has been, Gareth Southgate, definitely. So, right, moving on from England, Myles, I'll stay with you because I want to talk about your highlights of the tournament so far from the few games we've seen. And I know what you're going to say. I agree. The Italy game, 3-0 against Turkey, was so impressive in many ways. It had to be a patient performance, really. And the first half was quite frustrating for them. But they were fantastic, weren't
they? They were fantastic, yeah, really, really good. I think they showed why they're kind of being talked about a little bit now. They had such great time on the ball. They moved it so well. How many people would say, what do you think of Italian football? And they go, well, it was slow, defensive. This wasn't at all. They weren't passive. They controlled the whole game. I think Jorginho held the pace really well. Barella got forward incredibly well. They supported Spinazzola on the left-hand side and let him go forward as well. And that really, really worked. Insigne looked like he was really ready for it and got his goal that he massively, massively deserved. Immobile's not always kind of hit that form for Italy, and he managed to get a goal early on. That's going to be huge for them going into the tournament, his form. So, yeah, they looked fantastic. They just looked very ready. I think off the back of the run that they've had coming into this tournament, you can understand why they feel that way. They missed the World Cup, as it's been mentioned, went on this unbelievable unbeaten run. Mancini's completely changed the style of play that they use, and they just look eager to show people we're back. And they're missing some really key players. That midfield 3 that started of Jorginho, Barella, and I think it was Locatelli, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You'd argue Verratti would have started that if he was fit. And Pellegrini probably would have started. Unfortunately, he had to pull out the tournament a day or 2 before with injury, which is a real shame for him. So they're not even at full strength, really. And they've got depth. Yeah. They played Berardi, but brought on Bernardeschi. And you think, that's really nice. That's a good player to have. They brought on Belotti up front.
Chiesa.
I'd kill for some. And Chiesa. Exactly. Kind of forgot. Chiesa's had such a wonderful season, and he's not starting yet because Insigne's there. Verratti's still got to come back. And you think, this Italy team, they look like they've got intent to win, because Turkey was their hardest game, I would say. We all sort of look at Turkey and think they could be dark horses here. They've got some good players in that team. They were dreadful that night. Yeah. But I'm not sure how much of that was their doing, because Italy just took the game. So I can't wait to see Italy come against a really big side and see if they can still do that and make sure they don't just revert to, all right, sit back, Chiellini and Bonucci don't have the pace to press like that against a big team, but they did in this game. They pressed everything Turkey did. They were urgent in everything they did. Chiellini at 3-0 up makes that challenge and celebrates it like he's just scored the winning goal. I love that. They want to be here this time, Italy, you can see, and I think that could take them really far.
Yeah, I think having those as their two centre-backs as well, it was almost like a bit of nostalgia because it felt like something out of a different era when you compare them to the youth of the rest of the team. I thought they flexed their squad depth massively by bringing on some of the players that they did. It was really quite surprising, I think, for those that haven't seen much of Italy, which we've talked about already, to see that much quality come onto the pitch. And the way they basically bypassed the Turkish midfield, it wasn't even there, was really impressive as well. So for all of their brilliance, I think Turkey were massively disappointing on that note. And you say that you think it was more Italy's excellence that kind of made them stand out. It was kind of almost equally Turkish, kind of a non-anonymity, really. Their midfield was non-existent. They let a lot of people who had backed them down, I think. Dave, did you see Italy as a potential winner there in that first game? I know it's early days, but I think it kind of put a lot of people's thoughts towards their favourites, switching from other teams to potentially pick people like Italy now that are surprising quite a few.
I mean, stranger things have happened. Obviously, the last time they won the World Cup, they probably weren't one of the favourites to win it.
True.
So it's a team game at the end of the day, and they've got a solid team, as Myles was saying. They've got more strength and depth what they have had in the past, and definitely progressed as a team. There's youth in the team, there's fresh legs. Obviously, they've got that base at the back, which is getting them there. I'm sure their legs are feeling a little bit heavier these days, the centre back. But they've shown through their previous defensive record that they are hard to score against. I know it's not. I know some of the teams haven't been particularly brilliant. I think I was telling you the other day, wasn't I, that I think the last time they faced a decent team before this game was against the Netherlands, I think, and that was in the Nations League. That was in 2009. So, they're yet to be tested, but that's the same to be said for a lot of teams as well. Obviously, we're waiting to see what England are going to do, when they come up against a team of a high calibre. So, you can only give them credit, but at the end of the day, Turkey just looked like they turned up expecting to get beat, really. I think at one point there was like 10 players in their own box, right? But and it was just ridiculous to watch. But Italy did win the ball back really well. They were dogged in defence when they needed to be. To be honest, Turkey didn't often even get near their box. I think there was a one shot, was there, or something stupid?
I don't remember it, to be fair, mate. If there was one, it was that much of a poor performance.
Henry's under, I think there was. I think he had a shot, but really, it was a little bit of a damp squid of a performance from Turkey.
Yeah, but then Italy have definitely earmarked themselves, I think, as potentially going far in the tournament. And Italian football needed that. I think missing the World Cup was heartbreaking for a nation like Italy. And credit to Mancini, he's the one who's kind of instilled that belief. And that unbeaten run, and even the winning run recently, is not by accident, really. That's been a culmination of kind of ill feeling towards the older generation and the older way of managing the team. I think Mancini is the kind of player to kind of coach, rather, to get the best out of players like this, and that shows. So, really impressive performance. Myles, any other sort of highlights from you other than Italy?
Yeah, on that note, and I love this because I feel like this is vindication for me. People in this country in particular often talk about the Italian league as being this slow, boring, don't have much excitement, and it's completely wrong. It's a completely dated opinion, and people haven't really paid much attention to it. We saw that in the Italy performance, and the other best performer so far was Lukaku for Belgium. And obviously he's out there as well now these days, and I think that showed. It's great for me. My family originally are from Belgium. I love my Italian football, and obviously I'm here being an England fan, so it's been a good start to the tournament for me. Belgium, I think, looked good, considering they're missing arguably two of their most important players of their last generation. Obviously, Lukaku is a massive influence on that team now, but with no De Bruyne, you wondered how their midfield would cope. And Tielemans just stepped up massively. He was incredible, I thought. Really controlled the pace of the game again. Showed brilliant maturity.
Sorry, Dave, what was that?
Hazard. He just doesn't look the same player anymore, I don't feel.
Who's that? Hazard?
Eden Hazard.
Yeah.
Eden.
Well, I think that is the other frustrating thing, that even he isn't aware of what he's going to be able to contribute at this tournament. So seeing Belgium step up despite those absences, because normally you'd expect a reliance on those two players, didn't need it. Then Donker and Tielemans had a really good game in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
They're missing Axel Witsel as well to break things up, but they didn't really need that either. And I think Torgan Hazard had a good game too. And Carrasco, they both looked bright. Not the most dynamic that you can see, and I think they'll settle into the tournament. But when you've got someone like Lukaku up front, he doesn't need much, does he? The first goal, I'm still not quite sure why that stands. He's very clearly offside. I know the defender makes contact, but would the defender rush that contact if Lukaku's not behind him?
No.
Thought
It's the
that
same
was
as
odd,
the
but
one-
fair enough.
It's the same as the one who get Man City scored early in the season against you, Miles. Same sort of situation.
Oh, stop it. I'm not talking about that. That was ridiculous.
It's the same sort of
Stupid
thing.
goal.
We talk about
No, I
these
think-
phases of play. It happens,
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I think Lukaku's instinct to actually take advantage of that was kind of a testament to how he's come on as a forward player, because his positioning was fantastic. His finishing is phenomenal.
Yeah, his second one was
Technique
lovely.
is so good. And he's more than just a power player. I think that's what he was kind of dressed up as in the UK.
Yeah.
He's got so much technique on the ball, and his finishing is phenomenal. It really is. It's got better.
It is funny, isn't it? Because that was always the thing with Lukaku. They always talked about how bad some of his technique was and how bad his first touch was and stuff. And he's massively developed his game since he's been at Inter, granted. But I will say, without getting too deep, I do feel like Lukaku is better off outside of England. Because the English press, not to like an elite standard, but in some degrees, does have this problem with a black player is only ever known as powerful. And anytime they make a mistake, it's very quick to be like, oh yeah, they're clumsy, and it's just because they're too big and stuff. Lukaku is so much more than that. Yes, he's strong. Yes, he's quick. But his technical ability and his eye for goal is fantastic. His shooting is impeccable, and he showed that in his second finish. Thought it was really nice. Held the defender off, took it first time, lovely finish. And if he can keep firing like that, could be enough to carry Belgium further than I think a lot of people would expect. When you look at the legs of that team, do look a little bit gone. So I thought they did really well, and I thought they came out of it looking pretty sharp too.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lukaku's a streaky player, isn't he? Kind of with United, always played with a run of confidence. I think at the minute he's unstoppable because of that.
This streak has lasted like over a season now, so he's doing all right, isn't he? Like, I think he's been brilliant lately, and I think, he was great at the World Cup too. So he loves the stage for Belgium. I think they said before this game he'd scored something like 44 goals in 40 appearances under Martinez or something.
It's a crazy record.
Mad that is.
Yeah. Dave, I'm going to flip to you next. Any highlights that have stood out for you? Any players? Any teams that you think, do you know what? I'm sitting up and taking notice now. What do you think? What's your take on it?
Not really. Kind of obviously earmarking them for the tournament winners, but I thought the game last night between the Netherlands and Ukraine was probably the best game so far. It was end to end at times. It kind of looked like the game was dead at 2-0. And then Ukraine
should have been.
Ukraine should have had a penalty in the first half. Definitely didn't even get looked at by VAR for some reason.
On that, just quickly.
Yeah.
On that, one thing that we didn't mention, and maybe you guys could explain it to me, because I've not seen it talked about anywhere, but to me it seems really obvious. When Harry Kane collides with the post in the England game, he gets to that ball and the defender clears him out as he kicks it, which clearly affects the way that he shoots. Harry Kane, without that defender there, buries that. The defender makes full contact with him. He slams into the post, misses his finish, and no one even talked about it as being a foul. They were like, that's good defending. He's put him off. He hasn't put him off. He wiped him out.
Fouled him, potentially. I think more people were worried about Harry Kane because he looked like his face collided with the post, which was immediate kind of concussion concerns, isn't it, really? So that was probably lost in that.
Why didn't VAR look at that? Am I being overly sensitive of that? But I saw that and thought, that's a foul.
I didn't honestly think that, first of all, but then I think it was because of the impact. It looked more dangerous than me thinking about the potential foul there. But I don't know. Maybe that was reasoning behind it. Who knows?
Sorry,
They won. They won anyway. So
I just thought it was weird.
So
I'm not getting my fantasy team.
Dave, I think with the Netherlands as well, you were saying that their game was good for the neutral, but I think technically they looked horrendous.
Yeah,
they were playing this kind of kamikaze football, and Ukraine did not deserve to get a goal, really. You said a penalty potentially, but their goals came out of nothing, really. And I think the Netherlands looked tactically really poor. For all their quality, they didn't look great.
It was a bit of a Bielsa in the game, wasn't there? Bielsa style football. They were just they were creating a lot of chances. They should have scored more goals than 3 in that first half alone.
Yeah.
The strange thing was to see the Ukraine goalkeeper going from having an absolute brilliant half, the first half, to being absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he looked like he was throwing the game in some ways. He had a really terrible clearance, didn't he? That then came back as a shot for the Netherlands. But then I think in some ways he should have saved that as well, wasn't he? Was it Wijnaldum's first goal that was for? Yeah, really poor goalkeeper. Yeah. But I wasn't impressed by the Netherlands much at all.
Are you surprised? It's been said a lot, but De Boer is so out of his depth there. He talked to his pre-match conference before the tournament about how important a player was going to be. He hadn't even selected him in his squad. Like, the guy's not got a clue. We saw him at Crystal Palace. I always go back to that Mourinho quote after De Boer was talking about how Rashford was playing badly. And Mourinho says, I've heard some words from the worst Premier League manager of all time. That's not my opinion. It's true. I love it. He's brilliant. He's rubbish, isn't he? You ain't going to do anything with him.
No, I don't think so. He's got a talented bunch of players as well. Yeah. So it's a shame that someone like Depay isn't managed better, really. He will actually have a good tournament, I think, regardless of who he's coached by. So watch this space for him, I think. Other notable sort of performances to mention. Wales grabbed the draw against Switzerland. I think that was undeserved as well, to be fair. I think Switzerland should have buried them. But they're still holding on. Belgium, I think, was impressive, definitely. I think Lukaku looks like an absolute monster at the minute. He's unplayable, isn't he, in some ways. North Macedonia got their first goal in a major tournament. Goran Pandev,
of course.
I thought he was retired long ago. It's 20 years since his debut. That's mad. That's a good story.
I was just surprised that there was more than one player in that team that I knew, because Alioski's there from Leeds. So I didn't even clock that, to be honest. Goran Pandev. Brilliant. Yeah,
and then today there's been obviously Czech Republic have beaten Scotland 2-0, and again that just I think it highlighted really how poorly serviced Scotland are up front, really, because they created loads of chances. But Czech Republic potentially quite a dangerous team as well. Do you reckon they're on a par with Croatia or any better? Where do you think the Czech Republic and Scotland stand with those two?
Hard to say, isn't it? Because none of them have really showed anything yet. Czech Republic obviously got the win today, so it's a bit harsh to say that they didn't show anything, but I don't think Scotland made them particularly work for it. I would expect Croatia to be second in that group, but they were dreadful the other day, I thought. They didn't look like they were going to do anything. And they have still got some talented players in that squad. An over-reliance on Modric, massively. Yeah. Kovacic, we know, isn't a player that gets forward and creates things, really. He's just there to kind of break things up a lot. Perisic, he winds me up a bit, Perisic does. He's overly confident, and it showed in this game. Like Dave was saying, he kept hitting crosses way too long. Like Mandzukic was still there, and he's not. Yeah. So I expect better of Croatia out of the three of them still, I would say. But I don't think any of them pose enough of a threat that England shouldn't top this group comfortably. If England don't get 3 wins, you have to look and go, okay, why? Because if we don't, then you can't expect to win this tournament. And if England have got serious ambitions of competing, these are 3 games you've got to put to bed comfortably. Yeah, so I don't think any of them really stand out.
So we obviously sort of said who our favourites were before the tournament began. I don't think we've seen Portugal, who Dave sort of touted, or France yet. They're all playing tomorrow, aren't they? So any changes? Obviously, Myles, you're even more determined to say that Italy will win it. But Dave, have you seen anything from any of the other teams to change your mind?
Not as yet. Obviously, we're yet to see, the three of the biggest teams perform, and obviously they all play tomorrow night in 2 actually pretty good fixtures. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I think we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how France perform against Germany. I feel as though that'll be a big game, but I'm still unsure about France. It's just, even when they won the World Cup, they weren't particularly brilliant. They weren't really, you thought, what, they're by far the greatest team. It was kind of like a bit of a fight, an uphill struggle for them, and they did make hard work of it at times. So I think it's intriguing, definitely an intriguing Euros. Like, I think it's all to play for. I think that I don't think we can say there's one clear winner at all.
No, I think however the France-Germany games goes tomorrow, I think will dictate a lot of it, because France are still the favourites until they put in a shocker, I guess. And also Germany might put themselves back in contention, as it's being talked about in the same way as Italy have, really, with a really good performance. So yeah, we'll see. Obviously, Hungary, Portugal, we expect to see Portugal win that one quite convincingly. But again, the manner of the win dictates whether they're talked about in the same breath as well, isn't it? If they do the job as professionally as Italy did, then all of a sudden they're a favourite.
Cancelo's obviously had to drop out because he's tested positive for COVID. That's a big loss for them, really, on that.
Well, that's a worry as well, because if another player suddenly has contracted it as well, then their whole squad dynamic changes and people have to isolate it and go home. And like we were saying in the pod before this tournament, the pandemic tournament is very much still an issue, isn't it? Despite all the normal feeling to the tournament so far. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, guys, that's it for now. Next time we talk, we'll be discussing that group of death and how that pans out. But until then, enjoy, and we'll talk about it then. Thanks for your time, guys.
Bye, guys.